Welcome to the Superconscious Success podcast, where Jen and her Superconscious Success family co-hosts bring you valuable content each and every week on topics relating to manifestation, spirituality, and most of all, using your superconscious to manifest success in all areas of your life. Now on to today's episode.
Hey there, Superconscious Success fam. Welcome to another episode of my podcast where I connect with spiritual leaders, star seeds, and light workers to help you to connect with your higher self and with Source to discover your truth and embrace the divine being you're designed to be. This podcast is aimed at helping you to discover the light, both outside and within you, and eliminate the fear that our 3D reality and our ego insists on pushing onto us. Once we discover who we truly are and we live from a place of love rather than fear, then we can ascend into the higher dimensions. So let me ask, how many of you have had the privilege of tapping into your Akashic Records? I know I've been blessed to do it, and it's something that every single one of us are able to do if we discover the process for doing so. It's open to all of us as long as we're in alignment. Well, our guest today is going to go into the Akashics and a whole lot more. Jennifer Spor is a channel guide who taps into the Akashic Records to help you to discover your purpose. She says that listening and taking action on the purpose and mission that God has placed on your heart is absolutely necessary when it comes to moving forward. Her mission as a channel and a wisdom keeper is to light the way as you guide your to support you in bringing forward the full remembrance and embodiment of your soul's gifts and ancient wisdom to be shared with the world. So without further ado, let's chat to Jennifer Spor. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Hey, I'm great, and thank you for that completely rock star introduction.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I've been really excited to talk to you because, as I said, I have actually tapped into the Akashics before, and it's something I actually want to learn a lot more about because it's not something that I've had a lot of time, and as you've said before, it's something you tend to be called to do. So we're going to go into that in a little bit, but how about we start off by you telling us your story and how you got to be doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, that's always a big question. I'm going to try my best to summarize it into just, a few minutes.
Oh, good.
So essentially, the high level version of my story is that, like so many people, I was working in a corporate position. Actually, I used to work in the retail industry for, it ended up being over 23 years, I think, when I finally left. So I didn't always work in a corporate role. Okay. In fact, my whole life has very much been outside of what one would consider to be, typical society standards. I didn't go to college to get a traditional degree. I was on my own at 16, but I started working in retail when I was 19. And I genuinely loved it for so long. And I started out as an associate in the stores, worked my way up. And for the last 10 or so years of that career, I had a director role in corporate, overseeing operations for about 1,200 stores. So it was a pretty
Wow.
large company, but I really loved it for a long time because I loved working with people. Mm-hmm. And, I wanted to be a teacher when I was young. Important to mention that because we're going to end up coming full circle here. But what I realized about why I stayed in that industry for so long was because I often refer to it this way, but I was dating my purpose, not married to it, meaning that there were a lot of components about that career, such as getting to teach, mentor, lift others up to success, working with people, that was part of what I'm here to do. But then there were other parts, right? The bureaucracy and some of the other things that I didn't enjoy as much, right? What happened over time is that I started to feel no longer challenged in my job. There weren't any more promotions or, boxes to check off the list. And so that's really when the fog started to lift. I like to say I started thinking about what was next, which was a big deal because for so long I thought I would retire, from that job. My career was really well established at that point. And But I didn't take action right away because of the fear of change. You know, could I find another job at that high level? And I was, you know, under the spell of thinking that I had to check certain boxes off the list in order to be successful. Like if I didn't have a degree, where would I go? All of the things. So I didn't take action. It was really, so probably almost 2 more years went by after that. And my mom was then diagnosed with terminal cancer. And it was really that journey that was the catalyst for me taking action, because there was one moment in particular. I was flying back and forth between New Jersey and Idaho at the time to be with her. And I was at her bedside one day. It was just days before she passed, and just being present with her. And then my phone started blowing up, and it was something happening from work. Okay. And just understanding that this was in the context of I had a job where I was on all the time. Okay. So my phone was blowing up, and in the scope of things, it was really like an issue that wasn't the most important and could have been prevented. And I found myself in a moment looking at my phone, looking over at my mom. And I said to myself, this is it. I'm done. I'm not stuck in my life. I'm finished. I don't have any clue what's going to happen next, but I know that I'm ready for change. And it was in that moment that my courage finally exceeded my fear. Now, I didn't leave my job the next day. It was a transitional, it was a process, but much like the lyrics of a country song, I stepped down from my role, my corporate role, and I rented my house out in New Jersey, packed up my car, headed out west, and went back to Idaho, near where I grew up, because I was feeling called to be closer to my family at the time, after my mom passed. So that was how I left my corporate role, but I didn't start my business right away. I didn't know that I needed to. I thought the solution to my problem was getting another job.
As we often do. We need that 9-to-5 job to be able to survive.
Yes. So that's the mentality anyways. So I interviewed with a bunch of different companies. I was still consulting, just in a lesser role for my other company at the time. But every time I would have an interview for a position that, based upon my performance, I'd be a shoo-in for, there was always an anomaly where something would fall through. And the last interview I had with a well-known retail company, I had 6 interviews with them. They had flown me out to meet their team, and it was literally in the 11th hour of an offer, and then it fell through. And it was that final time that I finally, started picking up what the universe was putting down.
The universe is sending you messages.
You're not meant to keep doing this work, even just because. This is really important for the listeners to hear too, is because just because we're good at something doesn't mean we're meant to do it, because there's a difference between something that's part of your purpose, which brings you joy and that you're really gifted at, and a learned skill.
And I think too that what we were doing is just part of our journey. So like you said, when you were working in the corporate and when you were working in the retail, that taught you a lot of skills and a lot of probably life lessons to help you get to where you are now. And we're going to take a bit of a journey down the teaching path, because I know that you're a lot like me in that respect, where I wanted to be a teacher when I was younger as well. And so yes, sort of kind of goes full circle. So go on with your story, Jennifer.
So absolutely it does. And so I was just in transition and finally kind of starting to pick up on those signs. I again went into a state of reflection and started asking myself, okay, well, it's not this, then what is it? And what I realized is that I wanted to start my own business, because I realized throughout my own journey of awakening in transition during that time, I had invested in coaches, healers. I'd had readings done, spiritual teachers, all kinds of different people to help me with my growth. But there wasn't one person who could relate to what I was experiencing and help me actually bring it all together to integrate who I was becoming into my physical reality. So it was my own journey that inspired me to do this work. And so I did it. I took the leap, and I remember the exact date that was my last day at my company, and that was June 10th of 2016. Wow. I'll always remember. I haven't worked for anyone else.
And how has that experience been? Like being able
it's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster. I mean, it's like the biggest roller coaster that you would go on in the amusement park, right? I mean, I think becoming an entrepreneur is the ultimate test of who you are at your core, right? And any kind of niggly that you have is going to surface. Yeah. When you become an entrepreneur. That's not to discount the vast professional experience that I had, but leading in the way that I was leading for that large company and getting into this work was very, very
very different from what you were doing.
It does, and our purpose isn't an end destination. It's just as much a journey. And so there have been iterations in my business over the years. My work, the core of my work has always been the same, and that's been supporting people to bring forward their own wisdom and gifts and align with their highest path. But as time goes on, I continue to hone my gifts, and that's really, what led me to working in the Akashic Records, which I've been doing for the last couple of years. I was providing clients intuitive support and channeling support prior to that, but then I felt called to the records, and that's been an amazing adventure so far as well.
And I think that as we go through our awakening experience, as we go through our spiritual growth, we do tend to veer off and change our direction. I've done it myself a number of times, depending on what my higher self is guiding me to do, depending on what I find my higher purpose is. And my higher purpose has always been one of connection. It's always been one of connecting other people with each other, connecting other people with their higher selves and with source. And so I think once you discover what your purpose is, as you have, you've got a real a real set purpose as to what you're here for. But that's going to change as we move through life, and we're going to evolve spiritually, and so it must have been quite an experience going from that corporate. And what made you want to, I suppose, go down that channeling and that spiritual path? Was that something that just came to you one day, or?
Yeah, I mean, basically.
Yeah.
I had the feeling drawn to that work came to me, the best way I can put it really is dribs and drabs, like so much of the guidance we receive does. This is a great question, actually, because I'm thinking about that now, and it really did come to me in little kind of droplets. Like I remember a few years ago, because I also read tarot and oracle. I don't do that as part of my day-to-day business, but it's just another thing that
I love tarot and oracle too. Yeah,
it's another thing I'm trained in, but. Anyway, I had purchased a deck several years ago. It is an Akashic Records tarot deck. So that would probably have been the first sort of sign. Mm-hmm. And I really resonated with those cards. You just feel the energy of the cards. And And then I started researching the Akashic Records and just taught myself essentially how to access my own records. And then I thought, because I'd been working with clients professionally for a while, before I started working in the records. And then I felt drawn to train in the records more extensively to be able to serve my clients in that capacity as well. So then I invested in a much deeper, more extensive program around that. And then now I'm feeling called to teach other people how to connect with their records. So that was really kind of the Cliff Notes version of my journey to the records.
And it is interesting how we just get called to it. I mean, I'm a naturopath. That's where I first started off. And then I took a detour, as you did, and I ended up going to mindset, because mindset was something that I was super passionate about. And then I woke up one morning and my higher self was tapping me on the shoulder going, time to change direction again. And that's when I came into the spiritual field. So I think that it's something that's a process, and it's something that comes to you just naturally, especially if you're tapped into that higher self, if you tapped into that source energy. So we're going to start off by just saying, how about you explain to us, what are the Akashic Records?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Akashic Records are essentially the storehouse of information for your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And your soul is eternal. And so the Akashic Records holds the information for all of your incarnations, past, present, future lives, experiences, beliefs, relationships, emotions, all of it.
Yeah.
Is in your records. And the records are also a place to where you can experience not just receiving information, but powerful quantum healing as well.
Oh, okay. So how can tapping into those Akashic Records help? Say if somebody's struggling with something at the moment, how can tapping into the Akashic Records help with that healing side of things?
Yeah, so really it just becomes a matter of connecting to the records and asking, your record keepers and guides, whatever it is that you want resolution around, right? What is the root cause? What's important is that, especially if you're accessing the records on your own, is that the more detailed your question is, the more information you're going to ask, right? So your guides are going to give you the answer to exactly what you ask them. And you might experience guides providing information voluntarily. It really depends on what your own intuitive gifts are and what you're sensing, because everyone's experience is unique to them. But as a general rule, definitely get clear on what it is specifically that you want to receive information around, and be willing to go deep in the questions that you're asking, right? So if you feel like you're getting maybe kind of like a surface level answer, and it could be as a result of the question you've asked, is, continue asking for further clarity, right? To go deeper until you get to the root of, whatever it is that is causing you to feel misaligned.
Okay. So within the Akashic Records, you often say the Akashic Records are a really important way for you to access your purpose. So how does that work? Is that because we're able to travel into into our soul's past timelines, or how does that happen? Because of course,
yes,
soul
all of
contracts there, isn't it?
Yes. So all of that resides in your records, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I love about, because you can receive information intuitively outside of the records, okay?
Yeah.
What I love about working in the records is that it takes away any subjectivity, because you're going directly to your soul. You're going directly to where the information already resides. So there's no guessing, there's no subjectivity to it. I I find that it's a much more direct path to receiving clarity and to receiving healing as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so what sort of questions can we ask the Akashic Records then?
Right. Well, I'll start with what not to do.
Yeah.
I would avoid asking yes, no questions, because yes, no questions don't really provide you
anything
with a wealth of information, right? Or what I mean is asking questions in a way where you're going to get a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
There is a time for that, but for the most part, asking questions that are open-ended, like what or how or where.
Yeah, ones that are really going to provide you with that deeper answer. When we go to the Akashic Records, we want something that really taps into that soul and allows it to be able to tell us exactly what's like our purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I was just going to say, is that how you discovered like your purpose, or was that kind of like did you discover it in a different way?
No, I pursued my purpose prior to the records. That was back when I decided to start my business.
Yeah, okay. Fantastic.
So I was already called. I was already on a track. I mean, I just started working in the records a couple of years ago. So You'd already figured it all out. down that path, but our purpose is always evolving too. So there can always be questions around that. What's important is to set an intention to be willing to receive whatever information comes through. And to be emotionally and energetically just in a place of love and grace when you go into your own records, or if you're receiving a reading, because depending on your energetic frequency, you can actually, like if you're upset or, about something, the way that you interpret information can be skewed because of your own emotional attachment. So it's super important to be in a kind of a neutral place.
Yeah, of course, because your emotions and other blocks and stuff can get in the way when you're trying to get into the Akashics. So how are we able to? I know that you're actually in the process of creating some group training or something for people to learn how to do that. But what are some tips that we can take if we're wanting to get into our own Akashic records?
I would recommend, because there are plenty of like guided meditations on YouTube to go into your own records. I would recommend going there as a first step.
Okay.
You can simply, select a guided meditation that feels aligned for you to go into your own records and start to explore that way. If you're interested in doing something more structured, like a self-study, the school that I trained in, the Soul Journeys method, offers a self-study program for level 1.
Okay.
Level 1, which is the initial, learning how to access your own records. So you can go that route too. And I think the web address is Soul Journeys, SOULJOURNEYS.ca, because it's based out of Canada. So you can go that way as well. But yeah, it can start with something as simple as going on YouTube, right? And listening to a guided meditation that feels aligned for you, because there are a lot of different ones out there.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to be discerning in what you're choosing, right? Like it might not be the first thing that comes up in results, like feel free to kind of scroll through and feel into your body what feels aligned for you. It's really important to know what truth feels like for you in your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so much amazing stuff on YouTube. So many great meditations that you can go through. And I found some incredible ones that I do daily as well. So what would somebody say they went into their Akashic records? What can they expect? Like do you hear the message? Do you feel the message? How will they be able to actually figure out what it's trying to tell them?
Right. That goes back to how your intuition speaks to you.
Yeah.
Right. So how your intuition, how your guides speak to you. There are there are more than four clairs, and clair means clear, clear.
Yeah.
But there are four of the most common ones, right? You're either going to hear, see, feel, or know.
Mm-hmm.
The information that comes through to you. So being tapped into that is really key, right? And then trusting the information that initially comes through, that is the information. Like our ego mind can.
Yeah, that's the problem is kind of pushing the ego aside just so that you can get that information downloaded. So
yeah, and so setting an intention, right, as you're accessing your records, that you're clearing any interference, that you're setting your ego mind aside and being intentional around dropping down into your heart space, which is, where the intersection of the spiritual and physical is.
Yeah.
Is really important when you're, you want to be in a sacred space when you're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's awesome. I think it's definitely something that I recommend for people to take a look at, and because we can delve into past lives, and I know that when I had my Akashic records read, we delved into a few of my past lives as well, which is very interesting, and it also helps you to piece together what's kind of going on in your life right now. And that's the thing, I learned a lot from my past lives as to different blocks that were still sort of stuck in this particular lifetime that I had to move through. And so it's definitely something really interesting to go and start tapping into that. How often do you recommend that somebody does this? Like if you had clients and they wanted to tap into the Akashic records, is it just whenever you feel like you have something that needs answering?
Yeah, I mean that, or you could go into them daily.
Yeah. And just,
going into your records is also kind of like a form of meditation, because you're in a theta state.
Yeah.
When you're in there. So you could go in every day. In fact, I would encourage it if it's something you're feeling called to. It's a lot like working a muscle, right?
Yeah. Just continue working on it. Awesome. Yeah. So listeners, what I'll recommend is that you do head across to YouTube and you start to find some really good meditations that allow you to tap into those Akashic records. And actually, I think I might even try one today. And so is there anything else that you wanted to touch on when it comes to that, Jennifer?
I just would, put emphasis on ensuring that you create a sacred space for yourself. To summarize, make sure that you're feeling in a place of love and grace, in a neutral space when you're going in, and be prepared for, whatever information it is. If you even wanted to, if you went into your records and wanted to just get guidance for the day, you could even ask a question like, once you open your records, what information do you most want me to know in the now, or, for today?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's knowing, like, with super clarity as to what you're wanting to know when you go into those records, and setting that intention before you go in there. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. Is there any let my listeners know how they're going to be able to contact you, what you have going on in the future, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So I also have a podcast, Awaken on Purpose.
Yes, you do. Awesome.
The best way to connect with me would be to visit my website at jenniferspor.com. So that's JenniferSpor.
Yep.
And you can find my podcast there and all the different ways to work with me and all the different places on social media that you can connect with me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today, Jennifer. And I know that people have gotten a lot of insight into the Akashic Records. I definitely recommend that they go and check out your podcast, because I have listened to some episodes and it's fantastic. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Sounds wonderful. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. You have a great evening, okay?
You too. Thank you.
Okay, will do. Bye-bye.